So welcome to Woman.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here with you.
Absolutely. So tell the world who you are.
Who am I?
Who are you?
Well, my name is Terri Clausell Hannon. First and foremost, I'm a daughter of the Lord, right? Our Savior. He's my first love.
Absolutely.
Family is important to me. I am a supervisory training specialist by trade with the federal government. I also have a business, Epitome of Brilliance, where I pour into other women with mentorship, coaching, and I also sell skincare products. So that's
look at you. All
me
right.
in a nutshell.
A Jill of all trades, huh? I got you.
You can say that.
I got you. Okay, well, let's get into it then. So, Miss Terri, I want to know about your upbringing. How did your upbringing shape you as a woman, in your opinion?
So I was brought up in a really close-knit family. Both sides of my family, a two-parent home, and both sides were friends, and grew up in a family that was educated and had high expectations. But my mother, she defined womanhood for me. She is beautiful and graceful, and she handled so many things. She took care of my brother and I. She helped my dad build his dental practice, and so in my eyes, she was all the things, right? So I remember growing up wanting to be like her, and so just watching her and all the things that she carried and helped to grow and develop. And you know, she was, even though she was busy in helping my father build his practice, she was always there for us. And so just by watching her, I always wanted to be that woman, you know, that had a husband and a family, because she did it with so much grace.
Right. So she was kind of the backbone, so to speak, for your...
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, cool. So how do you feel like, you know, having both of your parents in the household, how did that really help you as a woman as well?
Well, I didn't realize it till later in life. You know, as you grow and mature, you start to appreciate things that maybe you had taken for granted before. But coming up in a two-parent household really was the model for what I wanted for my life, even though I missed it. But, you know, sometimes we can fall short and, you know, pick back up and try again, and that is what I have done. But that just really helped shape me as a person. And like I said, that was something that I always desired, is that having that family unit, because I think, you know, for our community, that's what it starts with, right? Having that solid family unit. And I know sometimes that always can't be the case, but it's always good to keep that model before us. You know, having something to strive for can help guide your path.
Okay, cool. So do you believe that motherhood, did it change your view as a woman?
Oh, wow. I could talk on that question for a while. It absolutely was a pivotal time in my life because prior to being a mother, I really didn't have set goals and a set path for myself. So when I became pregnant with my son, it caused my mom and I to grow closer because we connected on that level. And once I had my son, Blaine, it taught me about sacrifice. I think sometimes women and men don't realize the sacrifices that our parents make for us until we step into that role as, you know, a mother or a father. So when I had my son, you know, it was a major paradigm shift. I was like, it's no longer about me. You know, I have a life that I am responsible for. And ever since he was born, I have been on a journey to always be one day better. So that has helped me to evolve and to mature as a woman. And I'm still in process of that, right? Because we never stop learning, we never stop growing.
Absolutely.
But my kids, they drive me to want to be more, to want to do better, and to want to be an example for them so that they can turn around and be that for their kids as well as the next generation. And I can remember, you know, just answering this question, I'm recalling how one Christmas I was really struggling financially. And I used to always just, lavish all these gifts on my son. And one Christmas, I was kind of really struggling financially. I was in transition. I can't remember exactly why I was in that position, but and because I couldn't get him the gift I wanted, I wrote him a letter. And in that letter, I essentially told him that he saved my life
Wow.
just because of the major shift that he made by coming into the world and making me a mother. And so I know he held on to that letter, and I
I know he
often
did.
think about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
you know, sometimes stuff like that means a lot more to a child than even a gift you can buy them. You know, those memories will live on with him till he's 80 years old. You know,
Absolutely.
more so than a bike would or a new game would, you know. So that was definitely major right there. I like that. Okay, cool, cool. So tell me this. So when you hear the word woman, what is the first thing that comes to your mind?
There are many things that comes to my mind, but the first one is life.
Mm,
Without us, there is no life, right? We
absolutely.
are the men. You all give us the seed, we multiply it. You give us ingredients, we make a meal. You give us a problem, we'll help you come up with a solution. So that's the first thing that comes to mind is life. And there are some other things that come to mind, such as grace, connection. Oftentimes we as women, we set the temperature in the rooms, in communities, at home, at the board meetings. When things start going left, we have that nurturing ability to be able to bring things back center. So women, we serve in so many different roles and so many different capacities. But the first thing is definitely life. We
Life.
are, we bring life into the world. And for
Absolutely.
that, I think that we should be honored.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So what do you feel like is the biggest challenge today for women?
Well, that's an easy one. Comparison.
Comparison. Okay. Explain that.
Yes. I think it's been multiplied with social media, but just, looking at other women and feeling like we're missing the mark in some kind of way. The whole narrative of perfection, having it all together. Um, basically just comparison. Like we struggle with that. And when we're supposed to be locking arms and working together, sometimes we work against each other.
Right.
We may walk into a room and see another female, and we may think she's more beautiful than us or has something that we don't have, or maybe carrying a purse, that we wish we have. Sometimes it's, little petty things,
Yeah.
but definitely comparison. And instead of just admiring the other woman, because oftentimes we see things in other people that we wish we embodied or had, but instead of being envious or comparing, let that help you set the standard for yourself. Connect with that woman. See, oh, what did you do to get there? Or how do you walk with so much grace? Or how do you navigate life, with having to be a mother, a wife, and still show up the way you show up in rooms? And so if we could get rid of that comparison piece and realize that we are all connected. I'm a Bob Marley fan, and I'm all about one love. We are all, we are all connected,
Absolutely.
So if you can help uplift one of your sisters, will you help uplift us all? But as long as we're trying to outshine each other and outdo each other, and like my husband likes to call it, he's like one up each
Yeah.
other. Sometimes women do some of the things they do just so they can do that. But if we could get rid of that and rewrite the narrative and learn to lean into each other, see where you can help each other. Ask your sister, what do you need from me? Is there anything that I can do for you? And being able to embrace transparency And I know in our culture we were taught something totally different. You know, we were called to stay strong and don't let them see you cry, and what happens at home stays at home, and don't talk about your business and all the things. Those are all just tactics of the enemy to keep us separated.
Right.
Because he knows that there's power, you know, when we come together. So if there's one thing I would love to see us change, you know, in the sister circle, that is, you know, dropping those guards, you know. And I talked to several women a lot. You know, I engage with a lot of different women on my platform, Epitome of Brilliance, at work, at church, in different spaces. But a lot of women are just scared to do that because they're scared of being hurt. And my answer to them is always, but trust God.
Absolutely.
Yes, they may hurt you, but as long as you have God, you can navigate anything, right?
Facts.
And the Bible tells us to trust no man. And sometimes I think we skip over verses like that. But you put your trust in God and you say, okay, God, I'm going to drop the shield. I'm going to be transparent. I'm going to connect with this sister, making sure your intentions are right, because sometimes your intentions are not right.
Right.
So if your intentions are not right, within the outcome, right, the input's not right, the outcome's not going to be right. So make sure your intentions are right first and foremost, because that's all you can control. You can't
Absolutely.
control the other person.
And it's interesting because pretty much every woman I've interviewed has kind of said the same thing, that, you know, we have to start really not being against each other so much as women, right?
Yeah.
So I think it's interesting that y'all all kind of giving the same kind of answers for that question right there, which ties into our next question, would be, in what area could women do better? So do you think that kind of goes into that answer as well? Basically, just not trying to connect more with each other versus competing?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We can be better by extending grace, by being more forgiving. I mentioned, you know, my career, I'm a supervisory training specialist, and so I'm training on soft skills, and that's one of the trainings that I offer, is that perspective is reality, right? And so when we're dealing with each other, and let's say it may be a sister you're trying to connect with, but you're having a hard time, or maybe you're speaking to her and she won't speak to you, and you're trying to make that connection and she just doesn't want it, and you may take it personal. It's not personal. You have to understand people come to the table with different experiences, and sometimes you have to be patient and graceful and forgiving, and also have discernment, right? Because we're not meant to connect with everybody. So just understanding that people have different experiences, and so they have different ways of navigating life, and understanding that their perspective is their reality. And a lot of times people try to dismiss each other's feelings by saying, oh, they shouldn't feel that way, or they shouldn't act that way, and and all the things. But you don't know that person's story.
Absolutely not.
And how often do we take time to know that person's story and to understand? Because a lot of times when we talk to people, you have to read kind of in between the lines, right? And listen to them, not to respond, but to understand.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. So what do you feel like is the biggest impact in today's society that women are doing?
I would say having the conversations, starting the conversations, trying to understand each other, trying to get involved in the communities, trying to help educate our youth. I know so many women that pour back into our youth, and because we are the nurturers and the caregivers, and we're more willing to pour into our youth. I see that happening a lot. I feel like there's a shift. And I also think having the hard conversations with other women and with the men that are in our lives. I know from my parents' generation, you know, it's some things that you just didn't talk about,
Yeah.
right? And something that's really on the forefront right now is kind of a buzzword is women are talking about menopause. And so many women were suffering in silence with menopause, and the husbands didn't get it. One day they came home to Beyonce, the next day they came home to Sasha Fierce because of the mood swing. So
Facts.
I think being more transparent and peeling back those layers and being more willing to share with each other and, like I said, pour into our communities. I think that's women are making a huge difference in those areas.
Okay, cool. So this question coming up is my favorite one.
Okay.
So I want to hear your opinion on this one.
Okay.
Do you feel like men are doing a good enough job in their understanding of women? And this could be just men in general. It ain't got to be a husband. It could be a brother, a father, a friend, just men in general. Do you feel like men are doing a good enough job?
I'm going to say men today are definitely trying.
Okay.
I think there are more conversations being had. I think because of all of the information that is out there, the different podcasts like what you're doing here.
Right.
I think some men are really putting in that effort. And I know you say you were talking about all men, but I have to give my husband his props. He tries to educate himself on relationships and women, through podcasts and men's groups at church. And, I think the church is doing a good job with that as well. So yes, I feel like there's a shift where men are attempting to understand their women. Lots of men are putting in the effort, and they are maturing and growing and trying to understand what women need. We have all these books out there, right?
Right.
Movies out there about it. So so I definitely think there's a shift. Do I think there is more work to be done? Absolutely.
Of course.
Absolutely. Because I do know some men that have not matured in that area. We were just talking about it earlier. And so I think their women and other men need to lock arms and come alongside them and help them to understand and learn, right? Because, God holds a special place for women, because of the fact that we create life. And men have to understand when you do things to hurt your woman or your daughter or other women, you're essentially hurting yourself, right?
Absolutely.
So men, they're learning, to be those protectors and take care of their women and be a little more vulnerable and a little more tender and listening to understand versus listening to solve. I think sometimes men think when, their women come to them with problems, they want a solution or they want their protector to show up. Sometimes women just want you to listen, put your arms around them, say, baby, I got you,
And that's a big one too. I think men, we think more logically.
Correct.
Not emotionally all the time. So I think that's one, I've heard that answer before too on here. So
absolutely.
Cool.
And that's just, how they were raised.
Right.
That's, and again, but I do think the narrative is changing. Knowledge is power. And so not just, we don't want to just take in all this knowledge and let it fall on us. We have to take on the knowledge and we have to practice it. And, changing the way you approach something or how you relate to someone, it doesn't happen overnight, but it's those little small incremental steps that are the most powerful. And so over time, you keep taking those little steps towards understanding and changing of the behavior, but then before you know it, big changes have occurred. So I just want to encourage men to, get an understanding of women, not just your woman, but just women in general. It helps with relating to your mother if you're still blessed to have her. It helps you to relate to your daughter or young girls, that you may come in contact with. And so knowledge is power, but knowledge applied, that's a whole nother level.
Absolutely. Okay. So final question. What advice would you give to a younger you?
A book of advice. A book, but no. But I would tell my younger self that it's going to be okay and that you are enough, and that to just lean into God on everything. And I would just encourage her to just stay the course, trust the process, and know that you will walk in your gift, and that everything that you're going through is for a reason. Because I truly do believe your biggest and greatest, most influential power lays on the other side of your biggest fear. And so my biggest fear was always feeling like I wasn't going to meet the mark, and that I wasn't enough, and that I wasn't seen. And because of that, that to me is my biggest gift, is that I'm able to make women feel seen, heard, and understand through our interactions and conversations and understanding. So I would just encourage my younger self to just trust God, trust the process, and really understand that you are enough. I'll tell you a really short story about where the name of my business came from, Epitome of Brilliance. When I was at the golf course with my dad one Saturday, and this guy walked by me, and this is when I was in my real shy, like insecure, vulnerable, 12, the age of 12 for a young girl is hard. It's just a hard age. And he walked by me and he said, "You are the epitome of beauty." And I was so insecure and so not knowledgeable of what the word epitome meant. So I thought he said something derogatory. And I remember like low key crying. I was like, "Oh my God, like what does he mean? Like, am I ugly? Like what is?" And so it wasn't until I was older till I understood what epitome meant. And so that was a pivotal moment for me. And so that's where the name of my business came from. And I've always been passionate about young women. Even when I was in the classroom, I would always gravitate toward that little girl that felt like, I saw myself in her, and I would try to uplift her and, help her and encourage her and, be there for her to let her understand that she is great, even though she doesn't feel it in that moment.
Absolutely.
But that is what I would say to myself.